Allie with the Potomac Bead Company, and today I am going to show you a cool use for some of the findings that we have. This is an antique silver barrel here from Nunn Design, and you can see that it has a little ridge on it, and it has an opening, a rather large opening. It's going to be about 6 millimeter or 7 millimeter opening, and it's going to be used with cording. You could do it as a keychain. I'm going to be putting several strands of cording through it and making a necklace slide that it's going to hang from. You could also hang it down from a necklace so it is lengthwise. The cool thing about this barrel and a lot of the Nunn designs is that it is specifically made and measurement wise to host things like seed beads around it. So you can clearly play with the design, play with the actual embellishment. I'm going to be showing you how to cover it in a peyote stitch. So there's a number of these different findings that we have, and basically you just need to figure out how long you need your peyote stitch to be, or your other beads if you're working with a different size bead. I'm going to be working with the Delico size 11-0 seed bead. So if you need any of these materials, underneath the video there is a date stamp that says when the video was produced and a little bit about the video. If you kind of scroll down there or hit the show more button, that will give you links to all of these products online if you want to check out some of the Nunn Design products as well as some of the seed beads that I'll be using. You can also go to the top corner right of the video, which has a little eye, which is information from us, the video creator, for you, the video watcher, and it's information about the different materials that we would have and links to those on my website, potomacbeads.com. So if you need any of the materials, kind of to list them out, I'm using that Nunn Design 1-inch barrel here. And I'm going to be working with this and with my peyote stitch. To do the peyote stitch, I'm going to be working with Delica beads because these are created nice and even to go along with a certain Delica count. That being said, the Delicas are a nice tubular shape to match the tubular shape that this is, as well as they have that perfection as far as that 11-0 perfection, that they're going to be nice and tubular, that when you have your actual stitch, it is going to fit exactly in the tube as we create it. So we're going to be using, like I said, 11-0 Delica beads, creating a pattern as we go around the actual tube. I have 3 colors of the Delicas. I have a caramel Ceylon, a violet gold luster, and a Duracoat galvanized pink blush. And it really doesn't matter what beads you use to do your actual design. You could even do a single color. You don't need to do a design. I have just a diagonal design to kind of add a little variety of look to the actual barrel bead. I'll show you how to start out the project as far as how many rows, as well as how to start out this diagonal stitch if you want to do that. And then we'll keep going, creating our rows, and I'll show you how to stitch up the actual ending of it. And you don't even need any glue or anything to glue it down to it. We're just going to stitch it around, bring the 2 stitch ends together, and we will have it completed. In addition to the barrel here, which again, this is a Nunn Design barrel, and the seed beads, we also have some thread and needle. I have a size 10 English beading needle, and I'm using white wildfire beading thread in 0.006. Handy, I have a thread zap or a thread burner, which is going to burn the thread off the spool, as well as burn the thread edges down once I am completed with the project. I'm also working on a nice workable surface. You can work on a bead on it board or a mat, something to make it more efficient for you to keep working as you are creating. Nice clean area will make it more efficient and quicker. Like I said, if you want to and you want a cording to put this on, or you could make a beaded necklace to put it on, you can do that as well. The opening, you'll be able to get about a 6 millimeter bead through it. It has a little bit bigger of an opening than that, more like an 8 millimeter, but a 6 will definitely slide through and out and in if you want to have an actual necklace for it to fit on. This Nunn Design, like I said, is created specifically for this. It also has more uses. You can cover it with a paper and do some resin with it or some enameling around it. But keep in mind, there are probably other things that you may have in the house, some washers, some bolts. Look around because you may have other things that you can cover with a peyote stitch, give a cool design and a cool industrial look to it. To get started, we're going to begin with about 5 feet of beading thread, and I'm going to make little piles of my seed beads so I can start and show you how to begin a diagonal pattern if you want to do a diagonal pattern, and get ready to actually know how many rows in order to get our little barrel bead covered. So because this technique comes in, it's just a technique, and you can get different size of the barrels here and different things to wrap on, we need to figure out exactly how long the beads need to be in order to wrap around the barrel. So how long of your peyote stitch do you need to make? And then I'll go into how you're actually creating the pattern. Here on my thread, I have a stop bead. The stop bead is going to be a bead that is not part of your project, that will get taken off at the very end, but works to stop the beads from falling off the end of the thread. I have an 11-0 seed bead here that I've taken the needle and thread through 2 times in order to secure the bead in place. And then I have that 3 inches of extra thread there at the end. From there, I need to figure out how many beads long my peyote strip needs to be. Now, I've already done a couple of these, so I know that my count is 16 beads, but I want to show you how you would determine that length when you're thinking about how long you need your actual wrap to be. So I'm going to put enough beads on my thread here that I can kind of experiment and see how many beads go on. Again, the correct answer for this one happens to be 16. If you want to do the diagonal pattern, you're going to start out in groups of 2 for every bead that you want to do. So every line that you want, you need 2 of that color. So I'm going to end up putting on 20 beads just to show you that it's going to be too long, and then we go down to 16. I'll also grab a roll of wire here to show you how I would measure against that if I wanted to wrap around that, or wrapping even around like a seed bead tube. To do so here, you want to have on your 2 beads. Again, we're going to put on them in groups of 2. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, which is my correct number, 18, and 20. So I put the last 4 beads on in the coppery color, that pink blush, so you could see that they need to come off. So when you're trying to guess how many beads you need, you want to put a number of beads on your strand. From there, you're going to take that strand that you just made and kind of try to pop it into that little hole. You can see those copper beads make it too long, so you know that you need to take those off. You don't want any beads to have an overhang hanging over the lip or whatever you want to cover. So I'm going to take those 4 beads off, sewing back through them towards the tail. Kind of push them down to the side, and now I would move my beads away from my stop bead, push them together and see if they fit in. You can see they fit in pretty much exactly, so you know that your count would be 16. Again, you can use this method if you are wrapping something else as well. Once I have my 16 beads on, it's time to start the peyote stitch. If you're not familiar with peyote stitch, you may want to watch the peyote video in order to kind of learn peyote before you go into doing a diagonal or a design. With peyote stitch, you are going to sew through every other bead of this starter row. The starter row is 16 beads long, which is actually going to be 2 rows of your peyote stitch. Every row after this, you're going to be adding 8 beads at a time. Depending on whether or not you're sewing towards the stop bead or away from the stop bead is how you're going to know and determine which color seed bead to grab. When I'm sewing towards the stop bead, I'm going to add whatever bead my thread is coming out of. So as I sew here, I'm going to add whatever bead my thread is coming out of. Because my thread is coming out the end, I'm going to look at the very beginning and add that color. So I'm adding a copper bead. This is going to be bead number 17, and I'm going to sew back towards the stop bead through bead number 16, or I'm sorry, through bead number 15. That's going to stack beads number 16 and 17 right on top of one another. You want to make sure with that first bead, you can even use your needle if you want to, that those beads are sitting, like I said, stacked one on top of the other. From there, the bead that I'm coming out of is the bead that I'm going to add to get that diagonal stitch. So I'm coming out of that caramel bead, I add a caramel bead, and sew into the second of the copper beads. before. So skip a bead, so throw a bead. Coming out that coppery bead, I'm going to add a copper because I'm coming out of one and sew into the second purple bead. You want to make sure as you're doing this that first line you want to establish that your beads are not flipping from one side to the other. So you kind of pinch it in your fingers, pull nice and tight, and make sure that your line still stays in order. You can tell if your line's not staying in order because the diagonal stitch will not appear diagonal anymore. Coming out of a purple, I add a purple, skip a bead, and go through a bead, which would be the second bead of that caramel color. Coming out the caramel color then, add a caramel, and go through the second bead of the next color. And so forth. So you're going the whole way down this row, adding in 8 more beads. Again, whatever color my thread and needle are coming out of is the color that I'm adding as I sew towards the stop bead. So you can make a note of that if you want to kind of shut this video off and you still want to get that diagonal stitch. As you sew towards the stop bead, it is whatever thread, whatever color your thread is coming out of, that's the color that you're going to add. So you can see that diagonal stitch now is starting, and we just completed our 3rd row because we have 3 diagonal stitches long. As I come away from the stop bead, I'm going to add whatever color my thread, whatever color bead I am sewing into. So as you go towards the stop bead, it's whatever color you're coming out of. As you go away from the stop bead, it's whatever color you're sewing into. So I'm adding a purple because I'm sewing into a purple. Next, I'm going to be sewing into that caramel color, so I add a caramel. Again, we're going away from the stop bead, adding the bead of the color that we are about to sew into. So you're just going right down the line with this 4th row, adding the bead of the color you're going to sew into. So as you progress, it's really easy to see which bead actually needs to be sewn into, because that bead's going to sit up and stick out a little bit. Each row, like I said, because we started out with 16 beads long, you're going to add 8 beads, half the number. So you're adding that in half. Go ahead and put on another one of my copper and sew through the last copper. Because I'm turning around, I'm going to look at the top and the last color is purple, so I know a purple bead gets added. Now I'm sewing again towards that stop bead, so whatever color my thread and needle are coming out of, that's the color that I'm doing my peyote stitch. So I'm coming out of the caramel, add a caramel bead, sew through the copper. Coming out the copper, add a copper, and so forth. So you're going to continue this whole peyote stitch, adding in these diagonals. And because your tube shape can kind of vary, I'm not going to give you the total number of rows that you need to do until we get further along. You're going to be doing this for a while, going ahead in. If you do want to do a V, if you want to get fancy with your design, you can change the design at any point by switching that rule that I had. Right now, as I go towards the stop bead, it's whatever thread or needle, whatever color, my thread is coming out of, that I'm adding on my needle. If you want to switch that rule and reverse the rule to switch it away and towards the stop bead, you'll get a V in the design, and the beads will start coming the opposite way. So you can play kind of around with the different peyote stitches. If you have not done peyote, this diagonal stitch is a nice, easy one to start out with. Just knowing that rule of the bead, as you sew away from the stop bead, you add the color that you're sewing into. As you sew towards the stop bead, you're adding the color that your thread is coming out of. So again, we're going to go and we'll pick up again on about 16 or so rows, kind of check in. I'll do a bunch more rows to get my length, because eventually that length is going to wrap around my bead. And what I'm going to show you, if you're unfamiliar with peyote, is how to completely cover up and seam those two pieces together in order to cover something with your peyote little piece here, or your peyote stitch. So here I am with the piece that is going to be the 16 stitches or so long here. You can count kind of right along one of the rows. And what you're going to do is, as you think that you're starting to get close, You're gonna pop it in there and get ready to kind of seam up the whole entire piece. So you can see you have a couple more rows to do and to create that nice kind of seamless little bead cap there, or that peyote covering there to go around the cap. So again, you're just going to continue on with your rows, and you're just going to continue on until you think that you are close. I'm going to do another 6 rows or so, and then we'll come back and we'll measure. And the fun thing is, because you can cover different things, the count's going to be different. And that being said, that is going to affect how your diagonal stitches kind of line up. To get them to line up perfectly, you may want to, a lot of people will use graph paper, or you can actually use computer programs or some free versions out there of some beading ones to turn over and to make sure that your lines match up. If you are just doing 2 colors rather than 3 and you're doing the diagonals, you'll be able to match up really, really well. So if you do want to keep it simple and you want those diagonals to match up perfectly as we seam them up and to have a nice kind of perfect line there, then you can just do 2 colors to make it more simple as you work with it. So again, I have about 6 more rows or so to go. We'll come back and we'll show the process of kind of seaming up the whole entire thing. So at this point, it is time to seam up my casing here, or my covering. And you can tell when it's going to be time to do that because your beads are going to pretty much meet flush and you're not going to be able to see the actual seaming portion of it. If you do have to add thread at all, normally I would add it in the middle of the project. Because of the way that this project is going to be, I actually added it on the end here. And I'll get ready then to kind of burn it down to make it nice and flush against the project. However, to get started, I am going to actually cover the project. To make sure that I can cover the project and that the rows are going to meet up, you want to make sure that the endings here end on different beads. So what that means is you want to make sure that the bead on the left bottom that's sticking out is not also sticking out on the right hand side, that the next row up is going to be the actual closing off bead. From here, I'm going to go into the tube, and we're going to literally be seaming up. So we're going to sew in a zigzag, catching from the bottom of the last bead, going over to the first of the other bead. Zigzagging back up, you're going to feel kind of like a surgeon here. Go into then to the bead that's sticking out on the opposite side. You're going to zigzag through there, zigzag through the opposite side, and so forth. You're going to make sure that as you sew up the seam, that the thread itself is not getting tangled in the previous stitch. So you want to make sure basically to always keep your new stitches behind your old stitches here as you seam up. You can see I'm not pulling tight because it's going to get hard. If I do pull tight there, it's going to get a little bit harder to go in between the rows. So you're just going to go from right to left, seaming up, sewing in here, almost like a bodice of a dress, or seaming those 2 pieces of clothes together. I'm doing that zigzag here. So we're literally zigzagging, oh, not around the bead. And this is going to make it permanent also, that this bead casing is not closing over, or is not going to come off, I'm sorry. Going around then, we're seaming up, and you can just see that seam action happening. I'm going to pull nice and tight. And it fits like a glove and exactly around the project. Before I get too far now, I usually don't like to burn off my ends until the very end, but I am going to start burning it now since it's right there and it's affecting that closure. I'm going to pull the thread ends, burn them down, and then burn those ends down flush. And I'm going to kind of poke the project in there so those thread ends get tucked in and you don't even see them. Finishing up the stitch here, I'm going to take off the stop bead and kind of remove it out of the way. And we'll get ready then, after stitching up my final little beads here, I'm going to get ready to tie off our threads. So when I pull that last bead, you can see it pulls it nice and tight against the project. I'm going to take that thread and needle, come back down to the opposite bead here. I'm going to make that go nice and smooth, a little bit smoother. And we're going to come back down through that last bead, kind of circling and closing in that seam. From there, if you'd like, you can take the thread and needle back a couple rows, kind of seaming that project up. And I don't want to see the thread. I'm going to bring it back up towards the top here. And then again, I'm going to take off that stop bead and we're going to do some thread ends. So that closure now is completely closed on the bead, and we're just going to, like I said, tie off those thread ends and burn them down. So the really cool thing is you can create and kind of have designs. You can see where my seaming occurred because I didn't have an exact pattern lined up. I was just showing you that zigzag technique. So it zigzags, or does, I'm sorry, that line technique until we get to a certain point. Like I said, if you want to make sure that your lines meet up, you're going to do it in an even number because we had 16 beads. So if you do 2 colors and do zigzags, or rather diagonal stitches, you'll be able to get them to line up exactly. Like I said, there's also computer software out there if you do want to get them lined up exactly that you can do so and kind of know exactly how many rows and length wide you're going to do and make sure that those ends meet. Again, if you need any of the materials to do these fun coated drums here with the peyote stitch, back to the beginning of the video to the little date stamp underneath it, and you can kind of press on that to order from me online at potomacbeads.com. You can also subscribe to this YouTube channel to get regular updates on videos like this and different projects that we do and different techniques that we teach as well. You can also stay connected with me on Facebook and on Pinterest and on our regular website page, as well as asking to become a member of our jewelry group, which is a Facebook group, and it's for beading and jewelry making. Great interactive group to answer questions, help you guys out, and for you guys to learn something new. As always, with this fun kind of seamed up stitch of the peyote design, thank you so much for watching. Have fun looking now at all kinds of different objects in your kitchen, things that you're getting ready to throw away, going through the toolbox, or purchasing some of these fun Nunn Design beads and these tubes and coating and covering away with your peyote stitch. Thanks everybody for watching and have fun creating.